Hey guys, Preacher 357 here. Out here on the range with a gun that's been around a while, but this is a new version of the gun, and that is the Smith and Wesson SD9 2.0. So they've made some changes to the SD9 series. Specifically here, the main thing is the trigger. It no longer has the hinged trigger like they originally did. It now has this somewhat flat-faced trigger with the trigger safety in there that some people call a dingus. I don't think that's the actual correct term, but it does have this more Glock style trigger, I guess you could say, in some ways. And the question is it a big improvement? Because the one thing that's always been the downside of the SD series is they had a terrible trigger. And that was why I was so curious about this gun. Now, the other reason is that the first semi-auto gun that I ever purchased was actually an old Sigma. And if you know anything about the Smith and Wesson SD, you know it's basically a descendant of the Sigma. It's an updated Sigma, so to speak, which the Sigma was originally something of a Glock clone. And so this gun here is still very Glock-like in a lot of ways. And so I was really curious, did they fix that problem? Because with that Sigma I had, it was terrible. The trigger was horrible. Now, it was reliable, it would run, but the trigger was terrible. So I actually ended up eventually putting an Apex in that thing before I got rid of it. And I just wondered, did they actually fix the issue with the trigger? Did they make it where it's usable? Because the original SD trigger was so bad it was practically not usable. And, you know, I'm a revolver guy, and, you know, revolvers have those long, heavy trigger pulls. Those don't bother me a bit, but that heavy trigger on the original SDs and on the Sigmas was just, it was hard to deal with. It was hard to shoot accurately. You really had to concentrate and take your time. And, you know, they said that was for safety reasons with it being a self-defense pistol, which is what SD stood for, self-defense. But you can't defend yourself if you can't hit anything. So there's a line where safety and usability, you know, you cross the line from one into the other, and it just wasn't a very usable gun in my opinion, unless you upgraded the trigger with some sort of aftermarket. So I was really curious about this one to see if they changed more than just the shape of the trigger. If they went away from that hinge trigger or if they did anything else to it. And when I first got this out of the box, I really was not all that impressed. The trigger was heavy, very gritty. I mean, honestly, I thought it might have been a worse trigger than the original SD line was. But the more I've shot this gun, the more the trigger has really gotten a lot more smooth. All that grittiness is gone. And I happen to remember back when I did a review of that M&P 10 millimeter 2.0, that it had a similar trigger, and it was extremely gritty out of the box too. Terrible trigger out of the box, but the more I shot it, the better it got. And that's kind of been the way it is with this gun as well, although the trigger pull is still really heavy. According to the trigger gauge I have, it's measuring anywhere from 8.5 to 9 pounds. And sometimes it's a little lower, sometimes a little higher. It's not very consistent, it doesn't seem either, but it's always heavy. And, you know, even though it is kind of smooth and it does have something of a crisp break, it's just really, really heavy. And if you saw me shooting on the paper target there at the first, I was pulling some rounds low. And I was trying to shoot fairly fast to fit all that into the intro. And if you don't really stop and concentrate, you're going to pull rounds low with this gun. You have to really, really concentrate on what you're doing. And that's the downside of having a trigger that's 9 pounds. You know, it's too heavy. For comparison, I measured the Canic TP9 Elite that I have. And it was right at 4 pounds. That Taurus I just reviewed, the TS9, I think was around 5. You know, and several of these guns that I measured that I had out in the shop were in their 4.5 to 5.5 pound range, except for this one, which was 9. Now, if you don't know, 4.5 is half of 9, so this is twice the trigger pull, twice the weight on this trigger pull as some of the guns that it's competing against, because most of these were budget guns that I had out here. And you know, that's one of those things that might end up being a deal breaker when looking at this pistol. Now, I'll say it's better than it used to be. I think this trigger is usable, but you're going to take it's going to take a lot of practice and really getting used to that weight and working with it. Another thing about this gun that I have noticed is that I don't know if they've redesigned the serrations here a little bit, but they're not very sharp. They don't have a lot of grip to them. And after I went ahead and cleaned this last night in preparation for this video, and with the gun having ballast all over it, which it still has some on it right now, it's awful slick. It's hard to cycle the slide, hard to get a hold of it. You don't get a lot of grip from these serrations. Whereas I tried some of the other guns I had with the ballast all over them, you could still grab them easily and cycle the slide. So I don't like the serrations on this. I don't think they look bad, but they're not that functional. So I guess the question is, you know, how well can I shoot it? And I guess we'll see. As we'll do a little bit of shooting with it and see if I can hit anything with it. I mean, I think it's probably a pretty good gun. All the experience I've had with the previous models, the predecessors of this gun, they've all been reliable. They've fed pretty much everything you wanted to put through them, and you know, that's not surprising considering it's basically, you know, based on a Glock, and Glocks are so reliable. So it's really just a question of that trigger pull. And if you're going to have to put an aftermarket trigger in it to make it usable, you know, that low price range, you know, goes up some. So these come in at about 300, I think, somewhere in that range. And so they're having to compete with things like the Canics, you know, with that amazing trigger those have on there. And it just doesn't stack up at all. But anyway, we've got to do a little bit of shooting. But first, if you would, check out the description of the video. There's a link there for the Gun Owners of America to join up for a discounted rate. And there's also a link there for the TFA, the Tennessee Firearms Association. If you live in this great state of Tennessee like I do, then I would encourage you to join up with the TFA as well and get in the fight for gun rights, as we're still trying to secure even more of the gun rights that we're supposed to have. We've got freedoms now compared to a lot of states, but you know, there's still some things that are infringements that are on the books that we've got to get rid of. So if you would, check out the description and click those links and join up and get in the fight. Also, you'll see here I'm wearing my Paul Harrell t-shirt. This was the t-shirt that was available to help support Paul Harrell, who's battling pancreatic cancer, you know, something of a legendary gun tuber. Unfortunately, these are not available anymore. They sold out of them fairly quickly, but if you would, keep Paul Harrell in your prayers, as he's still, you know, battling with cancer at this time, and his brother's having to do his channel in his stead. So anyway, let's get over and do some shooting. I've got a couple of mags here loaded up. They're 16 round magazines, just like always. It's the exact same mag as what the SD had before. They haven't changed that at all. One thing though, this gun did come with a Crimson Trace laser that you can install on the gun, which I'm not going to do, but they said it was the same price, so I said, well, might as well just get the one with the laser if it's the same price. But what I found out later on was it only has one magazine with it. So I think if you get the Crimson Trace laser, you get one mag, and if you don't get the Crimson Trace laser, you get two mags. I think that's right, maybe wrong. And if I'd known that, I would have just got the two magazines, because I'll never actually use this thing. So I actually had to go into town and buy an extra SD magazine so I would have two to do the video with. Somewhat annoying, but I guess I should have read up a little bit more before I made my decision. But anyway, let's try to do a little bit of shooting here and see if I can hit anything with it. Obviously, I was pulling them low because of the trigger weight. I'm going to have to concentrate on that. And it looks like they were going a little bit to the left. I don't know if that's the trigger pull, if that's me pulling it, or if it's just shooting a little to the left. So I'm going to have to really concentrate to try to hit here. And maybe as I go, I'll get better at it. All right. There we go. never hit these little ones. Let's try the cowboy. Get him all the way to the bottom. Whew. Yeah, I'm concentrating really hard and still not doing that well. I was really hoping for a better trigger out of the 2.0. And I think it's an improvement, but I don't think it's enough of an improvement, especially considering who it's having to compete against. Let's try this cowboy again and see if I can hone my shooting a little bit with it. Apparently not. All right, well, doing a little better. Try this one at 30. Well, I mean, I'm not going to win any competitions with this. Probably wouldn't win a competition with a really good gun, but I seem to be doing a little bit better with it. Getting used to it a little bit more. Because I've been shooting some guns that have some decent triggers on them. And you sort of get used to that, and then you come to this gun and you've got to reevaluate what you're doing. Start paying closer attention. But to be honest, this gun feels really good in my hand because the SD still feels a lot like the Sigmas. And I was really used to shooting that gun. I had it for several years. And it really feels comfortable in my hand. It feels like an old friend, I guess you could say. Very familiar. It's just not as good a trigger as that Apex I had in the Sigma. So if I was going to keep the gun and use this gun, I'm pretty sure I would end up doing something to it, whether it be an Apex. I don't know if I'd actually change the trigger itself. I would just probably change the springs out to decrease that pull weight. Why don't we go over here to 100 yards. Might be a futile effort, but we'll try 100 and we'll try 80 just to see if I can manage it. Don't have a very good feeling about it, but we'll see. Let's see where they're going. I have no idea. You can tell if they're going high or low or what. All right, I saw that one. I have no idea where they're going, but yeah, this trigger is just not very good. I saw that one. I'm definitely pulling them. Yep, that's just an effort in futility. So I guess I can say I'm disappointed. Not as disappointed as I was at first when I felt all that grit, but that's gotten a lot better, but it's still hard to shoot. And the other problem is I don't know if I'm pulling it all the time or if the sights are a little off. You know, am I hitting low left because I'm pulling it? Or am I hitting low left because the sights are off? It's hard to say. I guess I just need to adjust it to where I'm going, but I'm trying to use some Kentucky windage on it. Let's just go over here one more time. We'll shoot this last bag, and I think we'll pretty much be done with this one. I don't think there's much more to say about it. I shot quite a few rounds before the video, and I've not had any malfunctions. It's been reliable, so that's something positive I can say about it. It's feeding everything. All right. Well, I missed on the last round, so let me put one more in here. I can't finish on a miss. All right, one more time. All right, one more time again. I can pull that one to the left and high. Good night. I'm not happy with this gun right now. If I could say anything to Smith and Wesson, it'd be work on the trigger some. Work on this trigger. I'm just about ready to give up. But I'm stubborn, and I absolutely cannot end on a miss. So I got to keep trying. Step up a little bit. All right, forget it. That's the end of the video, guys. I appreciate you coming out. Wish I could have shot a little bit better with that gun. Pretty sure I'm not going to keep it. It's probably going to get traded in pretty quick because it's made me quite upset now. But anyway, guys, I appreciate you coming out. God bless you. Y'all take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time.